All right, today we are opening a cold case file that's been frozen in time for more than 60 years. We're going deep into Russia's Ural Mountains to a place the local Mansi people call Kholat Syakhl, the Mountain of the Dead. And we're going to dissect one of history's most chilling and deeply perplexing unsolved mysteries.
This right here, this is the scene that kicked off decades of wild theories. It's a single tent, torn open from the inside, and half buried in snow on a totally desolate mountainside. It was found on February 26, 1959, and what investigators found inside just made things even weirder. All the group's supplies, their food, and, get this, their shoes, had been left behind. The mystery really does begin right here. And this is the question that just hangs over everything, the central paradox that has haunted this case from day one. Look, these weren't amateurs. These were seasoned, hardcore wilderness experts. And yet, they made a choice that seems completely irrational, a decision to face almost certain death in the brutal freezing cold. Why would they do that? The scene just doesn't make any sense. It's a total contradiction. Inside the tent, you have money, food, cameras, and most importantly, their life-saving winter gear. But outside, the evidence points to this bizarrely calm escape. Footprints showed they walked, they didn't run, in a single-file line away from the tent. This wasn't some panicked stampede. It was an organized retreat from some kind of unseen yet immediate threat.
You know, to even get a grip on what might have happened here, we have to understand who these people were. Because this was a group of tough, incredibly skilled individuals who were anything but unprepared for the harshness of the Ural Mountains. This crew was the real deal. They were on an expedition rated Category 3, which is the most difficult rating you can get. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was a brilliant engineer and a veteran hiker. The most enigmatic member, Semyon Zolotyov, was a decorated WWI veteran who knew a thing or two about survival, and Zenaida Kolmogorova was a natural leader just known for her grit. The point is, these were not people who would just panic. And tragically, the only reason we have a survivor, Yuri Yudin, is because an illness forced him to turn back early. Okay, so now let's put on our detective hats. Let's step into the role of lead investigator and really examine the hard evidence. We're going to piece together the timeline of what was found on that deadly slope. The search took months. After the group missed their return date, a rescue operation finally launched. The discovery of that tent in late February was just the beginning. The first 5 bodies were found pretty quickly, but it wasn't until the spring thaw in May that the final and most horribly injured hikers were located. And each discovery just made the mystery deeper. And this map, this really illustrates the bizarre layout of the scene. You've got the tent way up on the slope. Then about a mile downhill, there's a big cedar tree where the first 2 bodies were found. Scattered in between are 3 more bodies who looked like they were trying to get back to the tent. And then, finally, much further down in a ravine, the last 4 were discovered. This strange distribution basically split the case in 2, creating a major forensic divide. And here's where it gets truly strange. Investigators were basically dealing with 2 completely different causes of death. The first 5 hikers, officially they died of hypothermia, with only minor injuries. But the 4 found in the ravine, who were actually better dressed, had suffered these catastrophic internal injuries. It was like they had been in 2 separate horrific events. The medical examiner at the time, Dr. Boris Vozrozheny, was completely baffled. The victims in the ravine had injuries like crushed ribs and major skull fractures, but almost no external wounds, as if they'd been squeezed by some immense pressure. He literally compared the force to that of a car crash, but there was nothing in the ravine, no fallen rocks, no trees, that could possibly explain it. And then things got even weirder. They started running radiation tests. One victim's sweater registered 9,900 beta particles per minute. Now, to be clear, that's not just a little elevated. That is a level of contamination high enough to suggest direct contact with a potent radioactive source. Out here, in the middle of the desolate wilderness? This bizarre clue has fueled speculation for decades. I mean, sure, 2 of the hikers had worked in the Soviet nuclear industry, but that doesn't fully explain it. The bigger question, the one that really gets me, is why did the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, even think to order a radiation test in the first place for a group of hikers who seemingly froze to death? It's a question that has never, ever been satisfactorily answered. Okay, so let's just take a breath and recap this forensic nightmare.
We have an orderly retreat into a blizzard. We have two totally different sets of fatal injuries, one from cold, one from some kind of crushing force. And we have unexplained radiation. Faced with this impossible puzzle, investigators have spent decades searching for a single theory that can connect all these contradictory dots.
So, the most recent official theory, which came from a reinvestigation in 2019, points to something called a slab avalanche. The idea is basically this. When the hikers cut into the slope to set up their tent, they created a weak spot, and then strong winds piled on more snow, which eventually led to a delayed release of a small slab of snow. Now, modern scientific modeling shows this is plausible. A small but really dense slab of snow hitting the hikers while they were lying down could inflict those specific massive internal injuries we see on the ravine victims, all without leaving big wounds on the outside. But, and this is a big but, the original search team found zero signs of an avalanche, and those calm, single-file footprints just do not match the image of a chaotic flight from a wall of snow. This, of course, leads us to a more sinister theory, that the group stumbled upon a secret Soviet military test. A shockwave from some kind of weapon could absolutely explain those internal injuries without external wounds. It would account for the radiation, and it would certainly explain why, in the hyper-secretive world of the Cold War Soviet Union, the case was so abruptly shut down. It even lines up with reports from other groups in the area who saw strange glowing orange spheres in the sky that very night.
So, despite all the theories and a renewed investigation in recent years, the official finding from the original 1959 case remains as chillingly and as frustratingly vague as ever. This was it. This was the official and deeply unsatisfying end to the original investigation. An overwhelming force. It's a conclusion that explains absolutely nothing, while at the same time acknowledging that something extraordinary and powerful took place on that mountain. And that incredible ambiguity, combined with decades of state-enforced secrecy that was so typical of the era, ensured this mystery would live on. For the families of the 9 victims, there was no closure, only a wall of silence and a story that became a legend. So here we are, left with a forensic puzzle where every single piece of evidence seems to contradict another. A calm escape into deadly cold, catastrophic injuries with no visible cause, traces of radiation in the middle of nowhere. After all this time, we're still left to wonder, what truly was the overwhelming force the 9 hikers faced on that mountain? A force they were in the end unable to overcome.